where I'm concerned. Hello! This is a lecture for Wednesday, the 3rd of March, 2021. Definitely one of those 1-2 things. For ancient and medieval history, we have covered the Roman Republic in Unit 3A, the rising of Christianity in Unit 3B, and now we're going to cover the Roman Empire and its transition into medieval times, the Middle Ages, in Unit 3C, which is what we are just beginning. Where we begin is we're looking at the Romans and their ability to project power and wage war. I showed you the clip from the Gladiator movie, didn't I? Already.
No. I don't believe so.
Oh, I think I did, but I'll show it again.
Is it for Monty Python?
No.
Okay.
Not.
No,
Gladiator. It was the big battle scene. That's fine.
Oh, like the very first scene, like
Yes.
in the forest. Yeah, we saw that one.
Okay.
Yeah, we did. No, you know what? We did. I know it. I remember being here and I remember seeing it. So, okay, I will remind you. Rome has this opportunity for empire because it's strong. Weak societies do not get to build empires. They often get to be part of somebody else's empire, but they don't get to build empires of their own. So the Roman Empire is a product of strength, military strength, economic strength, political strength. Whole lot of strength going on in them Roman imperial times. So how is this strength expressed? Well, in the opening scene of Gladiator, which we did see when we were covering the Roman army, we saw two very different approaches to war, which I've told you about before, but I'm going to remind you of now. In the scene, the Romans have prepared a place in the great primeval forests of Marcomannia, which is southern Germany. They've cleared ground, they've leveled it into terraced levels, they've got artillery placed, they've got a kill zone, they've got avenues through which their infantry can advance. Why? Because this is where the battle is going to be. They have proposed to the Germans, the Marcomanni chieftains, which, and by the way, Marcomanni means frontiersmen. They have proposed, look up from time to time, makes me feel important, thank you, that there be peace on Rome's terms. And the answer comes in the form of the headless body of the delegate, of the person conveying the message, being strapped to a horse and sent back to the Roman camp. It will be war. Then the Germans do something kind of dumb, but also, what else are they going to do? They fight the Romans where the Romans plan to fight. They come out of the woods and they wing the head at the Romans and they start calling them sons of female dogs and all sorts of nasty names, and they start beating on their shields and chanting and getting their blood up. They're going to fight! It's like a football coach before a game. He's going to get his players together. He's going to give them a speech. And when they come out of that locker room, they're going to be ready to go, kill, yeah, move. Well, or whatever. The Romans don't have any of that. They're standing there in their ranks, waiting for orders. And when their orders are given, they're not like, ah! They march stoically towards the enemy. The artillery operates the mechanisms of the catapults and the ballistae, the weapons of war that shoot these fire pots and giant crossbow bolts into the heart of the German formation. They're really better at siegecraft, but it makes for a good movie shot. Then the infantry moves forward under this hail of fire, and the Germans are as they're getting hit from above. And then, as the infantry takes the full attention of the Germans, the Roman cavalry comes from behind and smacks into the rear of the German lines and causes them to collapse. And after a bunch of bloody hand-to-hand combat, the Romans win the battle. Again and again, when you have civilized men facing savages, the civilized men tend to be calm. The savages tend to be pumped up and ready, battle frenzy, berserker rage, the Vikings called it. They actually believed that the people with the most berserker rage became werebears, like a werewolf, but not a wolf, a bear. That they became bears in battle and they went berserk, berserk, get it, berserk, rah, and they literally would rip apart their enemies limb from limb. They approached fighting like a barbarian and like a warrior. Fighting was something that you did with hot blood. Fighting was something that you did as a result of being a man and striving to expand the power of your people, and because they're contemptible jerks and you're going to show them what for, and it's hot-blooded fighting that the barbarians do. The Romans, they're cold. In fact, the entire structure of Rome's army is cold-blooded to an extreme point. Their javelins are not designed to be the strongest and toughest and farthest flying. Their javelins are designed to break in partial half so that once the Romans throw them, the enemy can't throw them back at the Romans. And maybe if they hit, even if they don't kill, they've got this big dangly thing that's going to throw their shield arm off or make it very difficult for them to pull it out. It's a weapon that's not really designed to kill at maximum effect. It's designed to cause a nuisance, to distract and mess with the psychology of the enemy, much like our military weapons since the Vietnam War. Before the Vietnam War, the United States used a heavy rifle. The Springfield was a bolt-action rifle early in the century, and then we used what's called the Garand, the M1 rifle from World War II, which was a semi-automatic rifle. You pull the trigger, a bullet comes down range, or you pull the trigger, a bullet goes down range. And then after Korea, we developed the M14, which is a big rifle that can fire semi-automatically, which is really what it's good at, and fully automatically, which it's not very good at all. But in Vietnam, we decide that we're going to downgrade the size of the weapon and the size of the bullet. The Russians use a smaller weapon and a smaller bullet, and because the smaller weapon and smaller bullet are more easily controlled under full automatic fire, it makes sense that the Russians are going to be using fully automatic fire more than platoon-aimed semi-automatic fire. So we developed the M16 class of weapon. And the M16 class of weapon, which in civilian version is the AR-15, shoots a much smaller bullet. Instead of a 7.62 by 51 millimeter bullet, it shoots a 5.56 millimeter bullet. It's about half, maybe two-thirds the size of the older bullet. The rifle itself, the M16A1, A2, and the M4 carbine, looks like something you'd buy in a toy store for a kid. It's plastic. The old rifles were made of steel and wood, heavy. You get a bayonet on them, you've got a real weapon there. The M16, the AR-15, has this light grade steel and plastic features. The old rifles were designed by gunsmiths. The new rifle was designed by a guy named Eugene Stoner, who was an aircraft designer. So the old rifles had a lot of leeway built into their mechanism. They could take a lot of abuse. The AR-15, or the M16 class of weapon, the new American rifle, post-Vietnam and during Vietnam, was very intolerant and is very intolerant of any kind of fouling. You get even a little bit of grit or dust or mud in your weapon, it's probably going to fail. So why do we use it? We're the wealthiest country in the world. We've been that way since I was born and before. Why would we use a smaller rifle than we used to have with a smaller bullet than we used to have? Well, first of all, full disclosure, I'm not a fan of these weapons. I prefer the older weapons with the heavier bullet and semi-automatic fire to fully automatic fire, but that's just me. They did it for many reasons. You can carry more bullets of the lighter load. You can carry more bullets because the rifle is lighter and because the bullets are lighter. My point is you need more bullets because the bullets don't do as much trauma. But here's the real reason why we use the lighter bullet and the lighter rifle and have for the last 50 years plus. We do it because if you kill an enemy on the battlefield, how many enemy soldiers have you taken out of the field?
One.
One. One shot, one kill, one death. Yes.
It's more than one.
What?
It's more than one. Because of the lighter caliber, you end up wounding them instead, and it takes 2 or 3 people to carry that wounded soldier back.
Either you knew this story or I've told it before.
You've
And
told
I-
it before.
It's a good story! So I'm telling it again. Thank you, though, for indicating that. So I don't have to spend too much time. Yeah. The enemy, if you wound them with the lighter bullet, and our lighter bullet is a wounding weapon more than a killing weapon, it'll still kill you if it hits you in the right spot. But if you wound the enemy, 2 or 3 of the enemy are off the field. So our weapon is fiendishly clever. The Roman pilum, their javelin, is a fiendishly clever weapon. So again and again, what the Romans do is they approach war coldly. Instead of fighting like warriors with small or medium shields and long swords, they fight with these big rectangular shields and little tiny swords. Because they're not designed as individual fighting weapons. They're designed as soldier weapons to be used in dense packed formations. Everything the Romans do in war is coldly thought out. Now, I don't know what kind of arguments you've had in your life. I can tell you, in my experience, it may seem like the person who loses their temper first and the most is going to win because they're the loudest and the most dramatic and the most out of control. Oh, look at me, I'm having an emotional outburst. But in my experience, the person who keeps their head wins. In fact, like a bullfighter, if you can provoke the other person to lose their temper in the middle of the conversation, it's probably a good thing to do. Oh, they'll go, blah, 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 and they may throw things and smash things and try to attack you or whatever. They might not. But you are in control, and they are not. You are acting, they are reacting. You can manipulate them now that their emotions have completely taken over. The Romans do the same thing. They will use the emotionalism of their enemies, the Germans, the Celts, the others, to manipulate them across the field of battle and to win consistently against them in war. Any thoughts, questions, or comments on this basis of Roman power? The Roman legions are that basis of power, and the way Romans approach war is as a cold engineering problem, not as a hot problem of, ooh, it's going to be a sport, which is the way the Germans and the others sort of approach it. Any thoughts, questions, or comments before we? Yes?
It kind of seems like the armies that are more put together, the more thought out, the weapons that are more capable of doing something more useful to their side, they seem to win, I guess, in a way faster a little bit as they're knocking bigger portions of the opponent out rather than those who don't seem to really have a set plan
Yes.
or set weapon or anything like that. They seem to be more likely to get in trouble.
In any kind of crisis, it's good to have a plan. War is the biggest crisis of all because we're not facing nature, which is predictable. We're facing people who are unpredictable. We're facing the smartest creature in the known universe coming after us. And if you're in that crisis and you're basically just reacting to situations, you're not in control. Only when you can set the tone are you in some degree of control. And the Romans' coldness and their thoughtfulness, and the thoughtfulness of the British Army in the Imperial Age, and the thoughtfulness of the American military today, all benefit us because they allow us to approach things with a plan. You got two equally skilled people, and they're both in a crisis. One has a plan, the other doesn't. One with a plan is almost certainly going to be victorious. Having a plan gives you a purpose to go for. Not having a plan means you're just reacting until you're fatigued. Does that speak to what you were saying, or did I miss your point?
Can I add?
Certainly.
I'm part of an older family, so many of the adults in my family. My grandmother, she out sometimes, not so much now, as she had a heart attack last summer, or the summer before, and I went over there to visit her and have fun with her that day. But when we got there, my mom and I noticed that something was seriously wrong, but we couldn't tell exactly. And that day, my mom was like, "You need to call Dad. Grandma's going somewhere. I don't know where, but you need to call Dad." So I called Dad. We got her to the hospital, like a urgent care area.
Yeah.
And the calmer I stayed, the more in the way I stayed, and no one really seemed to notice that the kid was there, which was something I wanted because I didn't want to get in the way of anything.
Indeed.
And I realized that if I freaked out, my dad would have to pay attention to not grandma.
Indeed. And you had the grace at that point to remain calm. And it was a grace. It was a blessing. I've been in a few situations like that myself. It's never easy. And after the fact, when I'm alone or when it doesn't matter, then I'll fall apart. Luckily, for the most part, during the moments of crisis, I've been able to do what you did, which is to remain calm. It's as if the emotion just drains out of my body. And because of that, you were able to be helpful. You weren't adding to the problem with your hysteria. The problem with hysteria is it suddenly makes you the center of the tension because you're going bat nuts crazy. In the old days, somebody would give you an open hand slap across the face to get you to stop acting hysterically. Usually it would shock a person back to their senses. These days we're all namby-pamby about that sort of thing. Consequently, people stay hysterical longer. But I think if you're in a crisis, the way you handled it was the best. Because you added to the solution, not the problem. Does that make sense? Thank you for saying what you said. The Romans did that very thing. So, if there are no questions about the hot versus cold thing, we will move into the 4 eras of Roman imperial history. The Roman Empire begins in 27 BC when Augustus claims the name, when Octavian claims the name Augustus. Augustus means man of destiny, in effect. There are subtleties, but basically what Augustus means is man of destiny. A man blessed by the gods with a special destiny. That's the whole idea. He was born Octavian, which is like the 8th, but he is now Augustus, man of destiny. He's reborn. And he chose that name for very good reason. Because he wanted to be seen as somebody almost superhuman. He did not want more civil wars. The civil wars had been destroying Rome for generations. The first era of Roman imperial history is called the Principate. Now, the Principate is named after the title that Augustus uses. Augustus doesn't usually get called the emperor. Now, in a lot of movies he is, but in reality, Augustus' whole approach to taking and using power was to de-emphasize any official power that he may have. What got his uncle Julius killed was that Julius was flirting with the idea of becoming king. And that sent traditional Romans into an apoplexy of violence that culminated in his assassination and ongoing civil wars after that. Augustus never even let anyone around him use any indication that he was thinking about becoming Rex or king. No bleeping way. What Augustus called himself was princeps, which in Latin means principal citizen or first citizen. I'm just first among equals, baby. There's nothing special about me. I'm just a guy. I happen to own Egypt and command the armies, but I'm just a guy like you. We're all Romans together. Long live the Senate and people of Rome, Augustus says. And everyone goes along because it's Augustus. And everyone knows that if he orders somebody dead, they're dead. And if he orders somebody promoted, they're promoted. Augustus has, like all kings, the power of life and death, the power of benefiting or damning his people on an individual or a collective basis. So what Augustus says goes. He won the civil wars. Antony killed himself. Cleopatra killed herself. Augustus is the last man standing. Egypt becomes his personal property. The Roman armies owe allegiance to him. But he never lets himself take too many public offices. He becomes Pontifex Maximus for a while, high priest. He becomes censor for a while, the one who decides who are the Roman citizens, but not at the same time. He even becomes consul every so often, but it's not a regular thing. He never becomes dictator. His power is all unofficial. Unofficial. As princeps, or first citizen, he is the man that is going to take care of Rome. In fact, if you look ahead in your notepad at the pictures, let's do that. So you're in your notepad, you're looking ahead, and you see these pictures here, first page. Now, the guy on the upper left is an unknown Roman senator from the time of the late Republic. And in his scarred and wizened old face, you see the strength of character that made Rome great. This oatmeal-eating, ditch-digging, bridge-building machine of a man is the kind of ugly little Italian guy that built the Roman Empire. And he didn't mess around. He was a serious guy. You do not want to mess with this guy. Now we look at the upper right. This is the great statue of Augustus. There are many, but this one is the most famous. Now the right arm, which is outstretched, is out of proportion with the rest of the body. If you know anything about artistic proportion, if you were to bring that arm down, the arm would go down below the knee, or to the knee, and human arms don't really do that, but fine. Augustus's hand that's outstretched is designed to hold a flag or a pole or a standard. So you can put the standard of Rome or one of Rome's eagles in Augustus's statue's hand, and there it is, Augustus flying the flag of Rome. And this is Augustus on his best day. This is a glamour shots version of Augustus. The Romans were more realistic than the Greeks. He still looked like Augustus, but this was a good-looking Augustus. This was not Augustus when he had a pimple, when he had a wart, when he had a boil, when he had hives. This is not Augustus when he's feeling sick. This is Augustus in the full flower of his manly strength. Look, Dad. What you see in addition to Augustus in the picture there, huh? You've said something, so I'm going to look for somebody who hasn't. Miss Davis. What else is in the picture besides Augie? A little angel, a little cherub. A little baby creature with wings. Do you know who the little Schnookums is? Yes.
It's Cupid.
Well, it could be Cupid. It may be because Augustus is descended from Venus. But it's also seen as Rome. So Rome, chiefest city of all the cities of the world. Rome, whose oatmeal-eating men went out and conquered everything. Rome is the helpless little baby clinging to Augustus's skirts. Rome, under the empire, is reduced from being the mistress city of the world to being completely dependent on Big Daddy Augustus. That's propaganda. That is the use of advertising techniques to sell political ideas, which is what propaganda means. So here we have Augustus telling the world, I'm here, I'm just a guy, but I'll take care of Rome. Because if Rome were a little baby, it could count on me for everything it needs. Okay, we go back. Now, the Principate is called that because it's the title of Augustus and the emperors that follow him. Its rough dates are from 27 years before Christ through the year of our Lord 96. It's roughly contemporaneous with the 1st century BC. Or, I'm sorry, the 1st century AD. Yeah, you got 27 years before Christ. That's just over a quarter of a century. But, and yeah, it ends in 96, not in 100, but basically it's the 1st century AD. It's from the Emperor Augustus, who's the first of the Julio-Claudian emperors, and it goes to the death of the Emperor Domitian, the last of the Flavian dynasty of emperors. And you don't have to know this, but I'll just say it. The emperors include Augustus, Tiberius, Caligula, Claudius, Nero, Vespasian, Titus, and Domitian. And between the two houses, between Nero and Vespasian, there's a civil war and a year of 4 emperors. So basically there are a bunch of emperors during this 1st century period that follow very closely Augustus's pattern. So let's talk a little bit about Augustus himself. Augustus is the only relative of Julius Caesar to become an emperor. Tiberius is not his natural-born son. Augustus's wife, Livia, has a son by a previous marriage. And that son is named Tiberius. And all of the relatives that become emperor after Augustus are of his wife's family. They are of the Claudian line, not the Julian line. The Julian line, the Iuli, Julius Caesar's family, are these winsome people who are descended from Venus, and they're considered to be charismatic and great leaders and great lovers and all that stuff. The Claudians have this reputation. There are 2 types of Claudians, the good and the bad. Wow, that sounds dramatic, doesn't it? Well, what they mean is this. When a Claudian is good, they're very, very good. But when a Claudian is bad, they're awful. Claudians of the dark side seem almost like insane psychopaths, sociopaths, and madmen. Of the good kind, they're reliable, tough generals and good administrators. Augustus himself never wants to be seen as a king. And he uses his uncle's example to make his rule better. Now, Augustus is not a general like his uncle Julius. That's what guys like Agrippa are for. He hires soldiers or has soldiers around him. But as a politician, Augustus is much better than Julius Caesar. For example, when Julius Caesar went to the games, to the gladiatorial games, which the Romans like, he didn't go because he was interested. He went because the Roman people are interested, and they like it when their leaders watch the games with them. But what Julius would do is he'd bring his paperwork to the games. And everyone in the audience could see him doing his paperwork and paying attention to that, and only occasionally looking up and going like this or like this. And the crowd didn't like that. They thought that Julius was being a bit of a fraud. Augustus, when he went to the games, he never did work. He laughed, he ate, he joked, he stood up and cheered, he booed. He was seen by the people of Rome as a Roman, as one of the people. Yeah, he may be the first citizen, but he likes the games just like we do. He likes the chariot races just like we do. He likes a good laugh just like every Roman likes a good laugh with their family and their friends. Another thing, Augustus reduces the size of the military because there's no more civil war. The only job of the Roman military is to protect the edges of the empire and to expand the empire from time to time when needed. So the massive armies of the Civil War period that were all the private property of the generals are disbanded. Augustus reduces, I think, to something like 15 or 16 legions in the entire Roman world. So there's a massive reduction in military spending. Because of this, Augustus can actually lower taxes, which are popular things. If you are a taxpayer, and you all will be at some point, when the government lowers your tax burden and still is able to bring you peace and prosperity in an unprecedented way, that's a good time. You have more of your money that you get to keep. However, one day, early in his regime, Augustus calls all of the people that are going to be his imperial governors together, brings them all to Rome, gets them in a room, walks in, says, "Gentlemen, I am looking forward to reading all your reports from the exotic places in my empire, our empire, the Senate and peoples of Rome, people of Rome's empire, that you're going to be administering on our behalf. Some of you are military governors, most of you are civilian governors. I wish you luck. But there's something that I really want you to understand, and this comes from the heart. And this is why I wanted to say this in person. I know how things used to be back in the Republic. I know that Gaius Marius becomes governor of Spain, and he's just a poor to middling rank military officer with no especial money. And after just a few years as governor of Spain, he becomes the wealthiest man in the Roman world. I know how that happened. Kickbacks, bribes. He got a cut and a taste of every business going on in his area. And I understand that that has been the norm. That what happens is you become a governor and you make your fortune through graft, through kickbacks, through bribes, through looking the other way, through all sorts of extortion and other things like that. Yes, that's the way it was under the Republic. And it was understandable, because in those days, when you stole from the Senate and people of Rome. But understand, I'll be watching, and if you steal today, you're not stealing from the Senate and people of Rome. You're stealing from me. You're stealing from me. And he leaves. Augustus cleaned house. The constant political corruption that had existed in the late Republic is gone. Because anyone stupid enough to steal from Augustus is going to end up sleeping with the fishes. You see, in movies, the Roman emperors are made to seem like British kings and queens. They usually are played by British actors with these wonderful Shakespearean accents. And they're shown as noble, and they were, to an extent, noble. But the real comparison between a Roman emperor and a modern leader isn't with the Queen of England. It's with a mafia crime lord. Augustus was the biggest mafia crime lord in all the known world. He owned the richest land in the empire. Personally, Egypt was his property and would remain the property of every Roman emperor afterwards. He owned Egypt. Its people were his tenant farmers. The military answered to him. Now, he would go through the rigmarole of appearing to have the Senate cut the orders of the armies and make decisions, but the truth is, and every so often, just to make it seem real, Augustus would seem to be on one side, and that side would lose, and he'd let it happen. Because he didn't want to seem to be like the king. If you show disrespect for Augustus, if you steal from Augustus, if you try raising rebellion against Augustus, he'll strangle you with your own entrails. Oh, he won't do it personally. He has guys for that. Just like mafia crime bosses. So, don't mistake the smiling face of the first citizen, just first among equals, as anything other than a pretense. You know why? Because the Roman people in Augustus's time still had this notion that they were free, and they liked being free. They didn't want to admit to themselves what they had done. It's like the old scene, the old adage. Husband has a lovely wife who's at home, gets a big promotion at work Friday afternoon, decides to go home 3 hours early, take his wife out to dinner a night on the town. They're going to celebrate, and he drives up, and the pool van is there because, they've got a pool. And when he walks into the house, his wife is nowhere to be seen, but there are noises coming from the bedroom that shouldn't be being made unless the husband is there. The husband walks down the hall to the bedroom and sees his wife in flagrante delicto with the pool boy. He doesn't know what to do. His jaw drops, and he goes back down the hall. Now, at this point, they both notice he's there. The pool boy, pa-ching, out the window, gets out of there before something bad happens to him. The wife cleans herself up, comes out, and says, honey, I know how it looked. It looked bad. But you got to understand. What happened was, it's funny. The pool boy was tripping, and he lost his keys, and they flew through the open window of our bedroom. So the pool boy asked if he could look for his keys, and I agreed. But I didn't want the pool boy in the bedroom alone, so I went with him, and we got into sort of a tickle match. We started a tickle fight. It was silly, and it shouldn't have happened, but it was not what you thought it was. After all, honey, who are you going to believe? Me or your own eyes? And what that's about is blackmail. What she is saying is, yep, she was unfaithful. He saw her. He caught her. She was cheating on him in their bed. If he acknowledges that reality, their life together is over. He'll divorce her. She'll divorce him. There's going to be a divorce. In the divorce, the way the courts are, she'll get plenty of the property. Unless he can prove that she was at fault, and since he didn't have a camera going snap, 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 it's going to be hard to prove. Not impossible, but hard. If they have kids, they're going to have to decide who gets custody. Despite feminism, women are still given an advantage in terms of getting custody if there's a divorce and there are children involved. He'll have to sleep somewhere else, or she'll have to sleep. The life that they've known, the comfortable life that they've built, will be over. In order to perpetuate that life, all he has to do is deny the evidence of his own eyes. All he has to do is make believe that what she's telling him, which is a complete farcical, nonsensical lie, happened. And if he believes her lie, they can make believe everything's okay, and we'll just forget about it. That's living a lie. It's not really a good thing to do. Augustus and Rome are in that position. Augustus is in effect saying to Rome, don't worry, honey. You're still free. Oh, God, you're free. Look at how free you are. You got the Senate. It meets and it votes. And I lose votes sometimes, And we got the people of Rome voting and electing consuls and electing tribunes and electing, we got the Vestal Virgins. And the army answers to the Senate and people of Rome. And, you're still free, totally free. I'm here to help. That's what you can think of me as. I'm your big helper man. I'm going to just make sure that you have all the help you need, Rome. After all, who are you going to believe? Me or your own eyes? Augustus creates a monarchy with republican forms. A monarchy with republican forms. And that monarchy with republican forms is going to work. The Roman people in sufficient numbers are going to buy it. Augustus and his successors will have all the power they could possibly want. The Senate is a sham. The elections are all a sham. It's just a design to make the people go along with the lie that they're still free. It's a sham, but it works until all the Romans that have the self-respect of freedom-loving people die of old age, and Romans come along who don't expect anything other than to be part of an empire. And then that begins to change. But it takes generations. However, no lie goes unpunished. And no sham of this magnitude is going to have zero consequences. Oh, there's a consequence. There's a big consequence to the Augustan solution to the problem of Rome's government. Here's the problem. When Queen Elizabeth II, long may she reign, passes from this earth, who then becomes monarch of Britain? Some of you should know this. When the Queen of England dies, who's going to become the ruler of England? What? It's a he. It's a king. It'll be a king. Yes?
Isn't it the firstborn son?
It's the firstborn son, who happens to be Prince Charles, Prince of Wales, who, if he has any sense at all, will immediately abdicate in favor of his son William, because Charles is a disaster zone as far as a king. He's a very unpopular fellow, and he has terrible instincts. His son, William, on the other hand, is beloved and has every chance of perpetuating the monarchy. We'll see what happens when good Queen Elizabeth finally passes. She is the longest reigning monarch in British history. Now, how do we know that Prince Charles is going to become king and at least have the option? Because he's the eldest son. Because it's a monarchy. Because in England, the eldest child becomes king. England does not have what you'll learn is a Salic law, which requires a male heir. England can have ruling queens as well as ruling kings, and it has. Some of England's greatest rulers, Queen Elizabeth I, Queen Victoria, Queen Elizabeth II, have been women. We know this because that's the way monarchies work. The eldest son or the eldest child or the selected child of the king becomes king or queen when the old king dies. Who becomes king when the old king dies? The eldest child, the eldest son. Everyone knows that. If there isn't a proper eldest child or eldest son, well, you can adopt somebody to be your eldest child or eldest son, and then you're going to have that person inherit. And that's how political deals are sometimes done. That's how dynasties sometimes survive or change. But Augustus cannot set up a law like that. Because he ain't king, honey. He's just first among equals. So who's going to become imperator, he who commands? Who's going to become princeps, first citizen, when the old first citizen dies? And the answer is, we think it's going to be his son, but he doesn't have any sons. But his wife has a son, but he's got some nephews. They all die. He's got some other nephews. They all die. They're all poisoned or they die under mysterious circumstances. There are many people who think that that is on purpose. In any event, his wife's son becomes first citizen when Augustus dies. But because there is no official recognition, legal recognition that Rome is now a monarchy, the typical laws that handle succession, imperial succession, are not established. The question of imperial succession is who becomes emperor when the old emperor dies. And this is never legally settled. Never. Diocletian, in 300 and some odd years, comes close to solving it, but his solution doesn't last. It is never effectively settled. Because to settle it would be to admit that Rome is no longer a republic, something Augustus is not willing to do, and his successors are not prepared to do either. It would be to reveal the farce that is the Roman Republic ongoing into the imperial era. Do you see what I'm talking about? So it is a fatal lie, and it's going to cost Rome big time. And we will leave it there. All I can tell you about the next emperor is Caligula be crazy. And we'll talk more about that tomorrow. Adios. You can talk